Can I please ask the clerk to call roll?
Will do. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Justin Hall. I'll call the roll. Carrie Akimi Hernandez. Lauren Simon. Chair Naomi Iwasaki.
Present.
Martha Armis Kelly. All right, Chair. We do not have quorum, but we can proceed.
Thank you. Are there any other members present that would like to introduce themselves?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pualani Vasquez, and I am glad to be here with you guys.
Thank you, Member Vasquez, and welcome. Okay. I believe we have a slide for the next item, which is our land acknowledgement. Thank you. And I'm happy to read this for now, since other subcommittee members aren't here. We acknowledge that the land that we now call California is the ancestral lands of the over 109 nation, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep reciprocal relationship with the land as its original stewards. Their ways, methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with indigenous communities and are committed to partnering and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. Our transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and future. We embrace our past with a future commitment to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls this state home. And now I will ask the clerk if there is anyone from the public who wishes to make public comment on items not on the agenda.
Chair, I'm not seeing any requests from any of our public attendees to comment on this item.
Thank you. Since I believe we still don't have quorum to potentially adopt the minutes from the last subcommittee, maybe this is the right time to move on to our main event, which I believe
Chair?
is a presentation. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that Member Simon has joined. I am
Oh, great.
working to promote them now to panelists, which would allow us to reach quorum for the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for doing exactly as I requested and interrupting me when we made quorum. Maybe can someone give me a shout when Member Simon has all the features?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Welcome. Glad you could make
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, thank you.
You're just in time for our first action item, which is to adopt the November meeting minutes. If I could get a motion.
Motion to adopt the November meeting minutes.
And I'll second. Clerk, can you please conduct a roll call?
Yes. Carrie Akimi Hernandez. Lauren Simon. Oh, Lauren Simon, I think you're muted. I didn't hear that.
Yes, I support. Good.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Chair Naomi Iwasaki.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The motion is approved.
Thank you, Clerk, and thank you, Member Simon, for the motion. So now we will move on to the main event, which I believe is a topic discussion staff presentation on data-driven implementation of the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. Do we have presenters from the safety programs and system operations teams here?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. I'm glad we can hear and see you now. To the staff, do we have a slide deck to put up so that the team can start their presentation, please?
Sure, I can start presenting if everybody's ready.
Great. Floor is yours.
Okay, I'm gonna send a request to allow me to present. Hey, can everybody hear me okay? And can you guys see my presentation? Okay, I'm hearing nods, heads up.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Naweed Nassar, and I'm the Acting Office Chief for Strategic Safety Implementation in the Division of Safety Programs, or Road Safety and Headquarter in Caltrans. On behalf of Paul Chung, our Chief Officer at Caltrans, thank you, everybody, for giving us this opportunity to come here today and give you guys a quick presentation of our Strategic Highway Safety Plan development. The goals are safety, equity, climate action, prosperity, and employee excellence, and that's what we strive for. Our safety and equity goal and the Caltrans Strategic Plan go hand in hand in accomplishing our mission of improving lives and communities through transportation. We recognize that the transportation plays a major role in lives of the people and communities we serve, for good and for bad. This is why one of our shared objectives for safety and equity in the Caltrans Strategic Safety Plan is to have strengthened relationship and trust with communities through direct, meaningful, and transparent collaboration. We also refer to this as intentional engaging, where we try to reach out to the community. So what does that look like? We go to the communities, we walk in their shoes, we listen to their stories, take notes, we ask their opinion, and we share our data and insight, as well as we develop solutions together. Okay. As part of our Strategic Highway Safety Plan, I'm going to start referring to it as SHSP because it's a mouthful. Safe system approach principles are incorporated into all strategic and potential actions. As illustrated on the little diagram on the right, we have the core safe system approach. Our safe system approach includes safe roads, safe speeds, safe road users, safe vehicles, post-crash care, as well as safer land use. So those are the 6 identified safe system approach. And surrounding that is the 6 identified principles of the safe system approach, which include death and serious injury is unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Responsibility is shared. Safety is both proactive and reactive. And lastly, redundancy is crucial. So everyone has the right to travel safe on all California public roads, whatever it's state highway system, all local roads, regardless of race, socioeconomic status, gender, age, and ability. So how do we accomplish that? So what you have here, I know it's a lot of information. This is the dashboard for State Highway Strategic Highway System Safety Plan Crash Data Dashboard. The website is right there on the screen, which is shsp.dot.ca.gov. And everyone has access to this. Sharing safety data from SHSP Crash Data Dashboard is one example of how Caltrans has engaged with local, regional, elected officials, and tribal partners. We had a lot of success with this approach in Northern California. For instance, in Caltrans District 3, which includes 11 counties and includes Glynn County, Colusa, Yolo County, Butte County, Sierra, Nevada, I believe it's Placer, and El Dorado and Sacramento counties. For those counties, we're on an annual basis to share data and discuss our shared responsibility to eliminate fatality and serious injuries by 2050. And on the next slides, I'll go through what type of data that we share. So this looks a little bit daunting. I'll go through other slides. We showed how 35% of fatal and serious injury collision occur on state highway system, whereas the remaining 65% occurs on local roads. We asked our partners, what do they notice in the data? What stood out to them? And what surprised them? Pop quiz, I'm going to ask you guys that in the next slides. We asked them about each of the 16 challenging areas, and I'll go through the challenging areas identified in the SHSP, and how we could work together to find solution. The 16 challenge area includes top high priority areas, which are active transportation, pedestrian, by which, active transportation is pedestrian and bicycle or our vulnerable road users, impaired driving, intersections, lane departure, speed management, and aggressive driving. The remaining focus area, which are aging drivers, commercial vehicles, distracted driving, driver licensing, emergency response, emerging technologies, motorcyclists, and occupant, and so forth. We took an all hands-on-deck approach to identify correctable patterns, seeing in the data, because we know we could not get to Vision Zero on our own. So I'll go through a little bit of an overview of the SHSP. Sorry if this is a little bit too small, but I'll try to do my best to explain it. Well, let's take it one by one. Let's start with the diagram on the left. The diagram on the left, the top graph or bar graph shows the fatalities and serious injuries. So these are the number of fatalities and serious injuries. And the bottom shows the total number of crashes. And the light blue color represents the fatalities that are occurring, and the dark blue color represents the serious injuries on top of its actual injuries and fatalities. And on the bottom is the number of crashes associated with that. So what pattern do you see? This represents a 10-year data from 2014 to 2023. 2014 on the left to 2023 on the right. So what type of pattern do you see? Do you see a trend starting from 2014 that the volume and the total number of fatalities and serious injuries increased all the way up until 2019, had a dip in 2020, and then start rise and a little bit of dip in 2022 and 23. The little dip in the 2020 data could be attributed to the COVID pandemic lockdown and so forth. To dive in a little bit more deeper, so the graph that I showed before are subdivided into the challenging areas that I talked about, which is bicycles, pedestrian, impaired driving, intersections, and lane departure. And then the other ones are speed management, aging driver, commercial vehicle, distracted driving, motorcycle, occupant protection, work zone, and young driver. On the left, it shows that about 41% of the fatal and serious injury occurs on state highway system, whereas the remaining 58 or 59% occurs on local roads. So what patterns do you guys see in this? Some of the things to look for and some of the items that we share with our local partners and tribes and elected officials is that on state highway system, bicycles are much lower than local roads. So our partners can potentially try to look into how they can improve bicycles and pedestrians infrastructure to reduce that number. And the bicycle and pedestrian are our vulnerable road users. But there are similarities too. For instance, for state highway system, the largest one is lane departure. Same thing for local road. The highest number of fatality and serious injuries are lane departures. So those are the kind of things we try to work with our local officials, local partners, and obtain feedback from them to see how we can do that. We work with our local agency and CHP and local PD and Sheriff's Office to see how we can address speed management and aggressive driving. Because as you can see, that's the number 3 highest one in the state system, and also number 3 in the local roads. Go to the next slide. So to further go into the data that we share, so we went through the overall, we went through the type of collisions or vulnerable road challenging areas, And then now we subdivide that into crash types and then primary collision factors. On the left is the state highway system data, and on the right is the local data. As you can see from the state highway system, hit object was number 1. So we had the most fatalities in serious injury attributed to hit object. That's the type of crash. As far as the primary collision factor, it was improper turning and unsafe speed. Same thing on the other side, hit object on the local road is number 3. But there are some similarities. Improper turning, the top 3, improper turning, unsafe speed, and under influence is the top 3 primary collision factors on state highway system, similar to unsafe speed, influence, and improper turning. That's the top 3, even though they're not the top, 1-to-1, but they're still the top 3. One thing we always also notice is that there's quite a bit of rear end type of collision that are attributed to fatality and serious injury on state highway system. Where on the local road, it's not as much. So this is an area that we can probably improve on. Before we thought, rear ends are attributed to congestion in operations, but maybe we can improve congestion in operations to reduce the number of rear ends. We can probably do something to get some of the fixed objects out of the way to improve some of the hit objects. So now that we talked about those 3, next I'm going to talk about how those collisions are attributed to the 16 high priority areas. So even though the high priority areas are our vulnerable use or active transportation, pedestrian and bicycles, 6% is bicyclists, 17% pedestrian. Impaired driving is 26%. Maybe we can work with our law enforcement to see how we can improve that. Maybe we can do community engagement, how we can improve that. Intersections, 24%. About a quarter of the collision happens on intersections. So when we do engagement with our local partners to see how we can improve intersection, lane departure is 44%. 44% of the collision are attributed to lane departure, as well as 34%. If you add all this up, it's not 100% because one collision can be attributed to multiple. For instance, an impaired driver can also have a collision on an intersection. So that impaired driver had a collision at the intersection that involved a pedestrian. So a little bit about impact from equity, so that this slide just gives you a kind of glimpse at here are all the challenging areas that we're looking at and what percentage we're seeing at a fatal and serious injury collision. The higher the percentage are, the ones that would be the longer line. Okay. So fatalities in disadvantaged communities versus non-disadvantaged communities, same, or for pedestrians are about 50, for bicyclists, it's about 41%. Pedestrians, 52% more. So disadvantaged communities have 41% more bicycle fatalities than non-disadvantaged communities. 52% more for pedestrians. Lane departure, impaired driving, 32%. Intersection fatalities, 41%. So these are the areas we can concentrate on. How can we improve the bicycles, vulnerable road users, and low-income and disadvantaged communities to reduce this number? Income impact and traffic fatalities. So the increased rate of fatalities in disadvantaged communities versus non-disadvantaged communities in the focused area. So the slide before, I showed you guys the high priority areas, and then this is the focused area. We don't want to forget about the focused area, which is aging drivers have a 33% more collisions. Commercial vehicles, 49%. Distracted driving, 34%. And all the trends are showing that disadvantaged communities has a higher collision rates and fatalities and serious injuries than not. So these are the kind of things we can potentially concentrate on. This screen shows how the number and percentage of population of Black and brown communities versus white, and it shows you the graph. Number of percent of population, and this is distribution of California fatalities by race and ethnicity. As you can see, Black and brown communities, this is 33% and 14%. If we were to subdivide that a little bit further, as far as the age group, age 20, 30, so if you look at the graph, age 20 to 30-year-olds make up about 19% of licensed drivers. Male and female driver license plates are relatively consistent by the age group. But if you notice, the dark green is male and the light green is females. Male drivers are prone to about 2.5 times more likely to be involved in a fatal and serious injury crash in California when compared to females. Maybe that should be our target area. Note that all crashes involve drivers and is not at fault, party which is subject to the officer at the scene. So we're not really blaming anybody. And lastly, this shows since 2013, fatal and serious injury victims in tribal areas increased by 79% versus the overall statewide that was 63%. So maybe that's something we can concentrate on. That pretty much concludes my presentation. I'm open for discussion.
Thank you so much. That was great and informative presentation. I'd like to open up the floor to questions from members, both on the subcommittee and not. I have a few, but I'm happy to go last. Are there any questions, members? Go
I'll
ahead.
jump in. Yeah.
Please do.
Did we talk about for the fatalities going down from 2021 to 2023? Because you had consolidated statistics for the 10 years, but like, or if you were to break out 2023, where did you see the most decrease in fatalities among the categories that you designated? Or maybe just the easier way of asking, like, what's your hypothesis for why it went down the last couple of years? And do you see preliminarily it kept going down in 2020, 2025?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely where the dashboard comes in and we can get additional information. I don't have that on the top of my head, on hand right now, but it's something that we can, a platform, something that we can run our platform and get to it. But the one thing is between 2022 and 23, what we try to look into is not 1 year data. We try to look at the trend. That's why we look at a 10-year data to see how the trends are.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it is like really interesting and surprising to me that there was actually a dip in the last couple of years. I mean, it's promising, right? And so I'd love to understand better, like where were the, categories where the dip was actually, was it geographic? Was it in certain types of crashes? Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that the other question I have, maybe I asked a flavor of this in previous meetings, is with the non-state highway and with the coordination that you're doing with localities, cities, counties. Can you tell us about like what are some counties that you think, or cities, whatever jurisdiction you think is most relevant that you think are best in class, so the rest of us can learn? Yeah.
Every district does things a little bit different. For District
Yeah.
3, we
Yeah.
were having each county, we would have a special meeting with them. So,
Yeah.
for instance, we have 11 counties. Each month, we concentrated on that county.
Mhm.
Each month, we took the
Yep.
collision data. I gave everybody a statewide of the collisions, but for that specific county, we would run the data, we would run the numbers for that specific county. For that specific county, may not be similar to the state. A county that has more rural characteristics, we talk to them and we talk about the challenging areas and how we can partner to address them. So if that answers your question. And as far as who's involved in that, we have our local PD, CHP, the tribe, cities, counties, communities. Anyone's open to come to those meetings and provide input.
Yeah, were there counties or districts that you thought were doing a really good job? And if so, why?
I would have to look into that.
Okay,
I don't know
okay,
which
no problem.
county or
Yeah.
districts are
Yeah.
superior to others. That's probably some
Yeah.
kind of a disaggregation of the data.
Yeah. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions, Member Simon. Go ahead, Member Vasquez.
Thank you. I think that, one, this is totally my jam. I love this stuff. I sit on a lot of the SHSP committees. And I think, when we look at 2023, especially the end of year, the finalized reports, we do see a dip. But then as we start to look at the preliminary reports, we see that not necessarily the crash serious injuries, but the crash fatalities are increasing. Now, there's hypothesis as to why that is, right? The increased speed that we experienced on our roads because of COVID, the me culture. There's a lot of different things going on. With you working in the space that you work in, do you have any idea as to any trends that you're seeing as to what that is? And more importantly, what type of educational opportunities we have for our counties, for our municipalities that we can do to help stem the fatalities that we're seeing on the roadway?
That's probably something I would have to get back to you. Developing the SHSP is one of them because the whole development of SHSP, we have a lot of folks involved. We have folks from CalSA, the tribes, local PD, and everybody. And that's as far as SHSP development goes. And then as far as what we're doing, as far as education, like I mentioned, we meet with the counties, we try to meet with them. Our public information office tries to do that kind of blasts as far as information. But yeah, I'll have to get back to you as far as what additional things we can do on top of that.
And I just have two more things. One is I've been trying to dig into the research with delayed licensure for our younger risky drivers. We've been seeing a huge trend with these younger drivers who fall into that graduated driver licensing program, delay licensure to 18 and above, so they no longer fall into the restrictions and the requirements that are under the graduated driver licensing components that we know keep our not just teens safe, but the people that they share the road with. I have been trying to get in touch with somebody at the DMV to kind of look at what those numbers are as far as people, younger drivers getting licensed in the different counties and delaying that license. So looking at those drivers that are 16 to 18 and then looking at drivers that are, 18 to 21 to see if we're actually seeing a shift down in the different counties and what counties those are in. Have you been able to see any data like that with licensing?
I haven't seen the data, but this is just my me just looking at the headlines and some of the other stuff. So take this with a grain of salt. But from what I'm hearing is that there are less 16 to 18-year-old drivers encouraged to get licensing than before. I don't know if the trend is shifting where 16 to 18-year-olds, they don't want to have driver license anymore as much as before. But that would be something to discuss with DMV and those folks.
And then one more thing. For, a lot of the different, especially the smaller municipalities that I work at that are hesitant to take on that Vision Zero approach, to take on that safe systems approach. Are you seeing any differences at the county level, at the city level with crash data, with cities that are really embracing the Vision Zero, the safe systems approach, and other cities that are more resident to do that?
I haven't came across any city or smaller municipality to reach Vision Zero. But like I said, I've only been in my position for a very limited number of time. But if we do have those counties or smaller municipalities, maybe that's going to be our challenge areas to reach out to them and try to educate and bring them on board to adopt the Vision Zero.
I would agree.
Thank you, Member Vasquez. Were those your questions and comments? Thank you. I have a couple questions as well, but I also just want to extend a welcome to our committee vice chair, Ana Gonzalez, who looks like just joined the call as well. So welcome, Member Gonzalez.
Thank you all. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I'm not sure how much of the presentation that you caught, but we are talking about street safety, fatality, serious injuries, both on the state highway and also some statistics on non-state highway corridors. I had a couple of questions about the data that was showing. There seemed to be, or I just maybe need some clarity. There was a slide that showed the challenge areas as an overview, and on the state highway side, there was a relatively lower number of intersections being attributed to fatality and serious injury crashes. But then on the next slide, which was the cause overview, improper turning is the top factor. And so I'm just curious if there's like an explanation for, to me, that seems counterintuitive, where I would imagine that improper turning is mostly happening at intersections. And so if it's on one hand, the highest or the largest proportion of cause on state highways. So yeah, if we're looking at slide 7, and thank you for pulling the deck back up. In the bottom left chart. Oh, so for this chart, if we look at the left side, the intersections challenge, it's there, but I think compared to impaired driving and lane departures and speed management, it's not as statistically significant. Whereas on the next slide, when we're looking at causes, improper turning for collision factors is the highest. And so I'm just curious if I'm misunderstanding something in maybe the way that the labels are defined here.
Right. So here, let me go back to this one. So this is primary collision factor.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so these are primary collision factors. And the one before that, let me go back. And this is where the fatalities happens. So intersections are here, right? And this is here. So that you're saying that, why is this higher, right?
Mm-hmm. Or it's just relative to other collision factors, it's the highest on this chart for state highway. But then on the previous slide, where those crashes are occurring or sort of how those crashes are designated, intersection seems relatively low. So I'm just like, am I just misunderstanding how the data is being represented?
So these are the total number of crashes that resulted in fatal and serious injuries. So improper turning, it could be anywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be at intersections, right? Yeah, but that's something I can get information. But improper turn doesn't necessarily have to be at intersection. It can be outside of intersections as well.
Like into a driveway, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay. I would just think that is true. Of course, you can turn kind of anywhere there's physical space to, but that I would imagine that, or I would assume that a vast majority of turning is happening at intersections. Okay. So just curious about that. Can you please define what occupant protection means in the data? I just wasn't familiar with that term.
Occupant protection, did I cover that?
There was an icon with a seat belt.
All right, let me pull that back up and share. Give me a second.
If it's helpful, it's on the challenge area overview, and then on the challenge areas that have the icons and the high priority areas.
Let me know when I'm there.
Yeah, so bottom left, 12%.
12% is seatbelts. People not wearing their seatbelt.
Okay. So when there's an occupant protection, sorry, I'm having trouble saying that fast, challenge area, that's a crash that involved a fatality or serious injury due to not wearing seatbelts?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Member Vasquez, please go ahead.
Occupant protection is also child passenger safety, right? So car seats, and 75% of car seats installed are installed incorrectly. So it's seat belts, it's the airbags, and it's also the child passenger safety seats as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my first thought was airbags until I saw the icon of the seatbelt. So thank you for clarifying. I have a few other questions on the data, but I can send them to staff afterwards because they might just be helpful to kind of take a second look rather than asking you questions on the spot for a slide deck. But I guess my last question is, you started off the presentation talking about the Caltrans strategic plan and all of that, but are there other influences that your team looks at to prioritize these different issues and then how to address them and countermeasures? There's a few times you said, oh, there's a significant proportion here. Maybe we should focus on aging drivers, or maybe we should focus on, awareness and law enforcement for impairment. So I guess my question is, what specifically influences your team's prioritization of the issues to focus on? Like, is it this data? Is it, elected officials' priorities? Is it policy priorities? And then how often are those priorities updated?
Sure. As far as how we do things, we have both systemic and which is proactive and reactive improvements. What we do have is we do the wrong way driver systemic improvements, where we look at the data and see where the collisions are happening when it comes to wrong way, and we prioritize those in a different bucket. We also look into run-off road kind of collisions. We kind of covered that. So we run on an annual basis. We look at the data statewide, and then we get locations where there's a lot of crossover median and that type of collision, and we generate traffic investigation reports, and we give it to our districts, and they do an investigation for that. And that's how they prioritize safety improvement projects. The other one was, like you said, as far as other locations, for instance, if there's a location that is of a concern, we get a request from a customer, from public or whatever, they share their concern. Our investigators go out there and try to see what the issue is and how they can mitigate it and what type of safety improvements can be done. So there's multiple ways we can implement safety improvements and prioritize.
So if your team has 100 locations that kind of light up on the data and, are also maybe getting customer requests to address issues at those locations, but you have budget to address 50 locations, how do you determine which 50 get that attention?
I'm not sure if reactive safety improvements are tied to a budget. I think Paul Chung is here. If you can chime more, but I don't know if we tie it to specific funding. Yeah, there's funding, but we don't prioritize it based on funding. What's your take, Paul?
So for Caltrans, every year for state highways, every year we have the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and it's at $200 million. And that's basically off the top from our shop. So it's not competing with other shop projects like pavement or bridge or culvert. So it is the top priority piece. So it's off the top, $200 million, and then every year. So reactive safety programs or projects. So it's drawing from that fund.
I think I can ask my question maybe better in writing, so I'm happy to also submit that to staff for some responses, if that's okay. I don't think I'm quite articulating. I maybe shouldn't have used the budget example, but what I'm just trying to understand is, how the team chooses which locations to address either first, or if a location has, more fatalities and serious injury collisions than others, does that sort of get more attention? But I can try to articulate it better in writing. But thank you. Just want to do a last, those are my questions and comments. If anyone who didn't get a chance to ask questions to the team, please. Member Vasquez, are you going to ask something?
I just want to add on to, especially since this is the data team, Naomi, the question that you just posed is so important to this work because there are so many holes in the data. So when we look at SWITRs, when we look at FARs, when we track this information is reliant on police reports being filed because of a crash. Now, we all know that our law enforcement partners are under a lot of stress. They're understaffed. Getting people out to crashes isn't something that happens anymore. There are a lot of crashes that are not reported. So especially things like near misses, all of these other things, right, are missing in this picture, in this data. And a lot of times on that SHSP, that data group, that's kind of what we're looking at, is how can we get those missing pieces, because we're just looking at the crashes that were reported. And so a lot of those communities, especially communities now that are very afraid to report things to law enforcement, that are very afraid to come into the hospital to get checked out, right? All of that information is going to be missing. And those are historically neighborhoods, streets that we've disinvested in.
Thank you, Member Vasquez. I really appreciate that context. And I think you articulated way better than I could the intent behind my questions. So thank you. I need to drink what you're drinking. Any other members or folks want to comment or ask questions of staff before we move on from this item? Not seeing anybody unmute or raise hands. Clerk, is this an item that we ask for comment if anyone from the public wants to make a comment?
Yes, it is. And at this time, I'm not seeing any requests from the public to comment on the item.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you to the team for that presentation. It was really helpful for us to think through and chew on, and for answering our questions. And we will follow up with some of those questions that we didn't get to ask in writing, if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, so I think that was the last agenda item, and so we can move to wrap up. Our little subcommittee will reconvene again in April, so it will be after the main general meeting in March in Sacramento. So looking forward to seeing folks who are able to attend that, and then virtually for those who are logging in. I've been asked to remind members, if you haven't already, to complete the end of your survey by this Monday, January 26th, and to schedule your member one-on-ones. And I hope everyone takes advantage of that opportunity to give feedback to staff about your experiences as a member on this committee, and any suggestions or ideas to improve either yours or others' experience, or our openness and ability to really reflect the communities that we serve on this committee. Any last questions or thoughts from anyone? Anyone wants to share? I just get in the way of everyone's Friday, the rest of your Friday? All right. Well, seeing none again, thank you everyone for taking the time to join, asking really thoughtful and critical questions of the data and our presenters, and look forward to seeing everyone at the next meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.